My name is Dr. Nakhat Shaheen and I am the program coordinator of MAHI. So hello and welcome all the learners of MAHI first semester and our resource person. So today our resource person will move on to another block of MHI-1, that is Ancient and Medieval Societies, that is third block, Formation of States and Empire. So here he will cover the four chapters. Those are Formation of States and Empire, a general introduction. The next one is the Persian Empire, the third is the ancient Greece, and the last one is the Roman Empire. So now I am requesting our resource person to kindly take over the class. So please start the class. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. In our last class, we have discussed threadbare the different river valley civilizations, various facets of the way of living of the people at different places, and the four major river valley civilizations, as is discussed earlier: Egypt, Egyptian civilization, Mesopotamian civilization that contained three civilizations, three prominent civilizations. There were also others. Harappan civilization was Indian civilization, then Chinese civilization. So today we will move to a next logical development that after the Bronze Age, what significant changes took place in those areas and how life took a turn for the better. So all these things will be our subject of discussion. That means in a way, various political form of government emerged with the social divisions and the rules and regulations system of administration. Then they took care to defend their uh, country and so many things as we are following nowadays in the modern period. So to start with, Unit 10, that is with the growth of Bronze Age technology, both Egypt and Mesopotamia had established a relationship of exchange with those parts of West Asia. It is a phenomenon that people living side by side will one day develop relationship. As you know, man is social and man needs so many things, requirements, which cannot be available in a particular region or in a particular country. And therefore, relationship with regard to exchange takes place, what we call in modern terms trade and commerce. So the Bronze Age, Egypt and Mesopotamia, they developed trade relations with the West Asia and also parts of Asia, other parts of Asia. And the influence of Mesopotamia and Egypt acted as a catalyst. Catalyst means that helps to develop relationship or to develop certain thing. Catalyst for the development of neighboring areas. So Development of a relationship was logical in history, in historical fact, as these areas were contagious, very nearer to them. So the Middle East could not escape this natural phenomenon, that is the establishment of trade relations with the Mesopotamia and Egypt. And then we notice that once the establishment is, once the relationship is established, there occur migration, that is tribal migration from West Asia and East Asia to Mesopotamia and Egypt. This indicates that the areas in Mesopotamia and Egypt were certainly promising, and the tribals from West Asia as well as East Asia made an exodus to those areas, probably for better prospects. As in today's scenario, we find that people from the poorest of the poor countries come in en masse to or in search of greener pasture. That is, they are unable to get the basic necessities, the essentialities of daily day-to-day life, and thereby to have a comfortable, not comfortable, to have the basic necessity for their survival. They are constrained to migrate from a from a poor area or from an area to another area with better prospects. That thing happened, that phenomena of nature happened in case of the tribals of West Asia and East Asia who migrated to Mesopotamia and Egypt in search of green pasture. So this brought about many changes. When foreign people, alien people come in large, come in groups, means in large number, they are bound to affect the balance of the demography, and also they are bound to affect the life of the locals. So various human groups settled, like Hittites, Indo-Aryans, uh, Russians, Mitanni, and so many human groups, human ethnic groups, they settled in those areas, and gradually state formation took place. Many states came into being in Mesopotamia, Anatolia, Syria, and Palestine. It's an evolution of state. People starting from the very past up to this period, people have evolved through various stages. Now they have reached at a point, at a stage where they form states, that is called state formation, and many states came into being. Many states came into being. It was natural, as considering the vast area of Mesopotamia and Egypt, it was conducive or salutary for the development of many states in those areas. A state can be formed according to the homogeneity of people. That one type of ethnic group may form a state, then one type of religious group may form another state. So racial considerations also hangs heavy on the formation of states. And Emergence of empires. When states are formed, the next logical step is the formation of empire. That means when the area under the rule of a particular king expands, then only much bigger than the area of the state, we call it an empire. So, with the formation of states, when a when an able king emerged and brought so many areas, so many kingdoms under his umbrella, under one administration, then only we say, considering the vastness of the area coming under a particular king, we call the area as not a kingdom, not a state, but an empire. It is because of the vastness of the area governed by the king. And we have Babylonian empires, then we have Akkadians in Mesopotamia, Sumerians, Assyrians, etc. In Mesopotamia, we have three empires. जोଉଟାକି ଆମେ civilization ପଢିଥିଲେ last class ରେ, that is three empires: Mesopotamian Empire, then Sumerian Empire, Assyrian Empire. So empires were formed after this formation of states. And in Assyria, uh, I have already, we have discussed this. The name of Assyria has been derived from their tribal god Assur. So territorial expansion, the Assyrians subjected Babylonians. It happens that one civilization declines, and towards the when a civilization uh, declines and disintegrates, loses its former glory, then it is subjected to a foreign invasion. And what happened exactly in case of Babylonia, that the Assyrians conquered Babylonians. So this is their territorial expansion. And in Assyria, one king, that is Tiglath-Pileser III of Assyria, introduced an extensive administrative, financial, judicial administration, and he had to maintain a standing army. He followed a ruthless policy of transferring population from one part of the empire to another part. Definitely, this was not liked by the people when they are uprooted from their hearts and homes. When, to give an example in history, from Indian history, when Muhammad bin Tughlaq uh, tried to or contemplated to transfer his capital from Delhi to Dolatabad, he was under a false impression that Dolatabad was centrally located and and would keep him free from the Mongol imbroglio. And he was mistaken, and the execution of policy was not up to mark. That means when he ordered that all the citizens of Delhi, with all their bag and baggages, had to move or required to move, people resented, people were highly dissatisfied because people do not want to leave their homeland. People do not want to leave their hearth and home with which they have many and which are attached their memories, and there are days of glory, there are days of happiness, and they are born and they develop certain attachment with that particular state. For example, another example that uh, if the government is giving warning that the climate or the climate is not is disturbing, and you have to evacuate the villages, evacuate the villagers living on the shore of the sea. Yet people do not want to leave their villages. They prefer to die, but not to leave the villages. It is after much persuasion, it is after coercive measures that people are evacuated nowadays. Similarly, so when Tiglath Tiglath-Pileser III wanted forced people to live in different parts of his empire, people were naturally dissatisfied with his. So he followed a ruthless policy. That is, he compelled people to move to other places. And migrations, conflicts, and new phase of empire building as a result of migration. When migration takes place, conflict occurs. And this is in the logic of development. When one type of a person migrate to uh, another area inhabited by a different type of people, then there occurs conflict. Conflict is inevitable. What to speak of a human beings belonging to different ethnicity, different race, different religion. Even the animals do not like if some, take the case of dogs, stray dogs who occupy a particular place, even an intruder comes, so another dog comes into the area, he resists, the dog resists the incursion of other dogs. This is this is why when people migrate from one place to another, conflict is in the logic of history. Conflict should be there because of the different way of living, because of the different lifestyle, different ideology, and and because of the fact that the old people were required to share the area with the new ones. So migrations, conflicts are related to each other, and the new phase of empire building. After so many, after a long gap, after living side by side for years together, there develop an amity, one sort of amity developed between the two groups, and gradually they reconcile to their fate, reconcile to their way of living, and finally they work soldier to soldier to help the ruler to build the empires. And and this is because this is due to this fact that great empires came into being. Unit coming to uh, unit uh, 11, the Persian Empire. Now, big empires came to be. Let us see what are the big empires. that created their mark in the annals of world history. Though the Medes were the first empire builders in Iran. The present Iran, Iraq are termed as Mesopotamia. So, and there the Medes and type of people, they were the first empire builders in Iran. And the Achaemenids created the first Iranian world empire. The Medes formed, created the first empire, or they were the first empire builder in Iran, but the Achaemenids created first Iranian world empire. That means they conquered areas beyond the frontiers of the then Iran. The territorial expansion and consolidation of the Persian Empire was accomplished in more than 50 years. Just 50, within 50 odd years, territorial expansion and consolidation of the Persian Empire was accomplished, was completed. Cyrus and the two great rulers who expanded Iranian Empire, Mesopotamian Empire, two prominent and illustrious kings or you can say emperors are Cyrus the Great and Darius first. They stand out as the key figures in this process. Cyrus first conquered Anatolia. The state Anatolia was first conquered by Cyrus the Great. One thing I want to inform you here that you must have find an epithet that is used to as a, in in suffix used as suffix the great. So why not all the kings are the great? Why don't we say that Aurangzeb the great, Jahangir the great, and Gautami Putra Satakarni was the great? No, we do not apply this suffix epithet to all the kings. We apply it to certain kings who are in recognition of their outstanding achievement. Then only we say the great. Take the case of Ashoka the Great. Ashoka was a great warrior and conqueror, you know, and when he was at the height of his glory, height of his military prowess, he gave up war and embraced Buddhism and realized that the real conquest is possible not through the sword but through peace and love. So at a time when he was at the height of his military power and if he wanted, he could have conquered a lot of countries. At that very juncture, he gave up war. Great sacrifice. So we we give him the epithet Ashoka the Great. Similarly, in any case of any ruler, when a ruler sacrifices a lot and then only and in an adverse situation sometimes then only we give him the suffix the great. Take the case of Akbar. We say Akbar the great. At Akbar's time is Akbar was born in 1442, and at a time 1542, at a time there was when there was bigotry, when there was religious fanaticism, when there was intolerance among the various religious groups, particularly the Hindus and the Muslims. Akbar would follow a liberal religious policy and uh, raised uh, took the religious toleration to the pinnacle of glory. That is by introducing the life, by respecting all the religions of the world. So, in an age of bigotry, when fanaticism was the norm of society, at that time Akbar could visualize it to introduce a sort of religion which could be acceptable to all the religious sects. So, what a great sublime thought in history, and how tolerant he was in those ages. So, considering his greatness, his large heart, history accords him the suffix great. Whenever you find that there is the suffix great, be sure that he has some greatness to his credit. So Cyrus the Great, he first conquered Anatolia, Lydia, and Croesus was first country to issue coins. Lydia was the first country to issue coins, and there Croesus issued it. So Cyrus defeated Croesus and occupied the most part of Anatolia. Babylon was included and captured in 539 BC. So this is mentioned in Old Testament. Old Testament the mention is that Babylon was invaded and captured in 539 BC. Old Testament କହିଲେ Bible has two parts. ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା Old Testament ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା New Testament. ତେବେ in Old Testament it has been found mentioned that Babylon was invaded and captured in 539 BC. And Cyrus pursued a liberal policy with regard to the religious and cultural traditions. And even he gave shelter to the Jews. Of many of the people he conquered, Cyrus was a liberal king and he granted religious toleration to the people and also the freedom of to practice cultural traditions of many people he conquered. Whoever the people he conquered were allowed to practice their own religion and to practice their traditions and customs. This was the policy followed by Cyrus. Then Cambyses. Cyrus died in 529 BC. Then came Cambyses, who ruled from 529 to 522 BC. And during his tenure, during his reign, Egypt was added to Achaemenid Empire. The Achaemenid Empire to which Cyrus belonged to. During the reign of Cambyses, Egypt was added to that empire. Cambyses was described as a mad and tyrannical person. Sometimes people are misunderstood and they give it a title out of sheer disgust. And this Cambyses was because of his cruelty. He was called as the man of tyrannical, or he was a tyrannical person and and had no respect for Egyptian tradition. ଗୋଟେ tyrannical personର କୌଣସି ଗୋଟେ tradition ପ୍ରତି ତାଙ୍କର ସେତିକି respect ନଥିଲା, and that is why he was called a tyrannical person. Then came Darius first. He continued the process of expansion introduced by Cyrus in the east up to Hindukush. ହିନ୍ଦୁକୁଶ ପର୍ବତମାଳା ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ସେ ଏକ୍ସଟେଣ୍ଡ କରିପାରିଥିଲେ ତାଙ୍କର କିଙ୍ଗଡମ ଏମ୍ପାୟାରକୁ, and during his period the Persians attacked Greek city-state Athens, ଯୋଉଟାକି ଆମେ କହୁ ଗ୍ରୀକୋ-ପର୍ସିଆନ war of 490 BC. The war took place at a place called Marathon, some 2 to 3 miles away from Athens. And in this fighting, Cyrus, Athens was not a match to Cyrus. Therefore, Athens had sent for help to Sparta, who was known for her warfare. But the superstitious Spartans, they replied that move, they could only move after a particular date, because they considered that date as as auspicious. Auspicious means when everything good is expected. So the Spartans uh, did arrived at Marathon a bit later, and by that time the Athenians on their own had uh, owned the war, and that took place in 490 BC. Then came, after 10 years, Darius died in between, and after 10 years from the Peloponnesian War, his successor Xerxes I in 480 BC, he invaded Athens, and this time Sparta took part and fought valiantly. Even the king of Sparta laid down his life in defense of the motherland and to detain the Persian forces from entering Athens. And this time also the Persians were defeated in a series of battles, and finally they received a severe blow at Salamis, which marked the complete rout of a Persian army. Thereafter, they dare uh, to launch any expedition against Greece, against any city-states of Greece. Then administrative organization. Their role included Mesopotamia, Egypt, Persia, north part of Arabia, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, and Persia, Macedonia, etc. That means the Persian Empire had grown large and it included many states. They introduced an effective system of administration. Such, naturally, such a big kingdom, such a large kingdom required an efficient system of administration to prevent any sort of internal rebellion or to maintain law and order or to allow these citizens to live in peace and tranquility. So they resorted to administrative organization. They introduced to effective system and the form of government was monarchical. Their empire was divided into a number of provinces governed by satraps. That means each province was called a satrapy, and Darius first also has left an inscription at Behistan, Utaki, which is named as Behistan inscription, and it is written in tri-language. In the language, three languages have been employed for writing this inscription. That one is Persian, other was Elamite, and third one is Babylonian language. So Greek sources say a satrapy for a province. Herodotus enumerates 20 satrapies, while Behistan inscription gives a list of 23 satrapies. Herodotus says that there were 20 satrapies, and an inscription says that there were 23 satrapies. So difference is not much. Therefore, it is around 20 or 21, 22 like this. So the ruler enjoyed absolute power over the territory through the satraps. Ruler enjoyed absolute power. The far-flung areas would be kept under effective control by the emperor through his satraps. That means provincial officer. A special class officer were called the listeners. That is the ears of king. One sort of a spy, you can say that listeners means the ears of king means wherever the person or the particular officer went, he could listen to the various developments that were going on within the territorial extent of a particular emperor. That means if any conspiracy was being hatched or if something went wrong, he was the officer who was there, whose sole responsibility was to inform the king, and that is why he was called the ear of a king, a very special officer who used to convey to the king the recent developments or developments in his far-flung empire. A powerful army was there to suppress the rebellion. It is a fact that when the kingdom becomes large on various grounds, the ambitious leaders, they organize people to raise the standard of banner against the emperor and to keep those rebellious people at bay. A strong army was the need of the king, or the king was in need of a strong army to keep the refractory people at bay. Imperishable 10,000. This is another term. The elite group of army and who were most loyal to the king were termed as imperishable 10,000. This is a term whose meaning is the elite of army most loyal to the king. The empire was too big to be administered from a single center. Certainly, when Persian Empire grew and included far off areas, it was not possible to administer the country from a single place or from a single capital. So the emperors had to uh, select other places as the secondary seats of governance. And one such place was Susa. Darius had built a monument there, a palace there, from where he used to rule. Besides its capital, or besides from its capital, then system of coinage. Coins are required. Initially, there were no coins. People Yet people carry on their trade on exchange basis, which we know in economics as the barter system. But gradually, when people uh, gather knowledge, their horizon of knowledge increased, they introduced coinage system. And coins were issued, both silver coins, mainly silver coins were used, and uh, and silver coins were the main standard weight. In this respect, they followed Babylonian system of coins. Coinage was an innovation which the Achaemenids borrowed from the Lydians. Lydians were the first to issue coins, and from them, Achaemenids learned the use of coins. In Western Anatolia, gold was used for coins. Silver was used to in common, but gold was also used. The light proceeds, one kind of coin made of gold and silver also. Silver coins were known to the Greeks as siglos. Siglos used to name the silver coins as siglos, and the exchange rate was fixed. One gold darik, that means one gold coin was equal to 20 silver siglos. The standardization of coinage, weights and measures, everything was standardized. That one standard was to be followed, facilitated exchange system and facilitated trade and commerce. And this standardization of values or coinage um, weights and measures helped a lot in trading activities. Language and communication. In Persia, Aramaic language was used by the common people, while the elite used to Old Persian languages. Common people used to Aramaic language, but people belonging to the aristocratic group, they used to Old Persian languages. And as regards to religion, Zoroastrianism was the religious belief of the people. And while some people followed Zoroastrianism, some others also followed uh, polytheism. Polytheism means worship of many gods and goddesses. We say the term as polytheism. And in Persian, in Zoroastrianism, one Ahura Mazda was worshipped by Darius. Ahura Mazda was the highest king, was the most powerful king in Zoroastrianism, that is Ahuda Maharaja. Ahura Mazda, जोटा कि आम कहे इन बुद्धिज्म इन जैनिज्म इट इज कॉल्ड लॉर्ड विष्णु अहुरा Mazda. In Zoroastrianism, the highest authority among the gods, and they also patronized some ancient Iranian gods. And these kings patronized some ancient Iranian gods. Decline of the empire. It is the law of nature that empires come up, empires see their plumbing days, and finally decline set in, fall set in, and we find it the downfall or decay of a particular civilization. This fact is not only true to the civilization but to many aspects of life, that something is created, grows, then decays. Then downfall starts and it is remembered by nobody or is no more after some time. Similarly, all the big empires of the world which had achieved uh, prominence in their time, they gradually declined. And take the case of Persian Empire, which had achieved wonders, and every time a ruler died, there were rebellions which weakened the empire. Whenever an empire died, there followed a kind of rebellion. People will certainly revolt if the king dies. This weakens the country or the nation internally. Battle of Granicus. Another big example is that invasion of Alexander the Great, who invaded or who invaded Greece and defeated the who invaded Persia and defeated Persians in the Battle of Granicus in 334 BC. Then he also fought a series of battles. In the battle, Darius first was assassinated in 330, and in this way, Alexander completed his campaign and occupied Persia. Then, in 500 BC, there is marked the beginning of classical age of Greece. By 500 BC, there started a classical age in Greece. From 500 BC to Macedonian conquest of Greek states in 338 BC. That is called the classical age of history. Crete in Greece emerged as the big Bronze Age civilization in, in Europe in 2000 BC. Minoan civilization flourished between 2000 BC and 1400 BC. Minoan civilization is another small civilization. Then geographical features of Greece. Greece is a mountainous region. Rugged mountains are there, and the mountains are so crisscrossed that large empire in Greece was not possible. So we find there a number of small city-states, and Greece was almost guarded by natural boundaries on three sides. So Greece, Greece was well protected, and her topography is mountainous because of the prevalence of mountains which create narrow valleys which is not suitable for creating large empires. The Minoan civilization, the first Bronze Age civilization to flourish in the region. In this region, the first Bronze Age civilization which flourished in the region means in Greece region, and it was named after the legendary king Minos of the Greek mythology. According to the name of a mythological king, the civilization Minoan has been named. We have certain ruins which are available today. Then sheep rearing and wool producing production were main protection of main production of rural economy. What wheat, grapes, and olives were main agricultural production. They used a script called Linear A, which remains undeciphered, like our Harappan script. In spite of the best efforts of scholars, they have not found, they have not been able to decipher what has been written in those points. And once the unknown script will be deciphered, many new things may come to light. Civilization came to an end around 1400 BC. Mycenaean civilization developed on the mainland Greece, flourished between 1600 BC 1200 BC. and the civilization was named after the site of Mycenae, situated in the north corner of the Peloponnese. The warrior aristocracy controlled everything. They had a brisk trade, foreign trade, and the Mycenaeans evolved a script which is known as linear B. I mean linear A particular. Now it is a linear B. The miscreants, the Mycenaeans evolved a script which is known as linear B. It was deciphered in 1952 by Michael Ventris. Linear B records survived in clay tablets. Clay tablets, I have explained you in my last class. Their language was Proto Greek. Proto Greek means nearer to Greek. That is called Proto Greek. We have Proto history. That means nearer to history. Not exactly the history, what is history, but nearer to history. That term is known as proto. In the proto treaty, in the sorry, proto Greek means nearer to Greek. It lasted up to 1200 BC. This Minoan civilization lasted up to 1200 BC. Then comes the Dark Age. Dark age means we give the name dark age to an age when no spectacular, no momentous events take place. But here we cannot say it is a dark age because of certain achievements on part of the people. So up to 1200 BC, we have the Minoan civilization, and from 1200 BC to 1800 BC, 4 centuries, the period is known as Dark Age. Dark Age means when no substantial things are achieved. But contrary to the conception of Dark Age, we have in this age written two epics, very great and famous epics written by Homer. One is Iliad, and second is Odyssey. Iliad, the epic Iliad, veers round to a war of a coalition of Greek states against the state of Troy. There was a state of Troy, there was a state named Troy, and Troy was in one side, and on the other, there was a coalition of Greek states. So, Iliad dilates upon a war which took place uh, between a coalition of Greek states and Troy. And here it has been mentioned about the Trojan horse, how in Trojan horse the war was conquered through the help of Trojan horse, and this war lasted for 10 years. Odyssey, Odyssey is an adventurous story, and in this adventure, Odyssey encountered Odyssey. Who is Odyssey? Odyssey is one of the heroes of the war. He uh, here in Odyssey, the adventures encountered by Odyssey has been narrated. Epics give us contemporary religion, mythology, beliefs, food habits, customs, manners, and dress up. And similarly, in the epics of India, that is Ramayana and the Mahabharata, they throw a lucid light on the then society, how people used to talk, how people used to take their food, how people behave, what why where their social manners, social etiquettes, and other usages of society. We can get a clear picture from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata in Indian context. Then uh, this dark age had a sorry, this yes, this dark age had two parts. One part spans from 1200 to 1200 to 1050 BC, and during this period, urban centers declined. The second phase, from 1050 BC to 800 BC, the second phase witnessed introduction and dissemination of iron technology. That means during the second part, we have the introduction and dissemination of iron technology. End of Dark Age was marked by revival of writing in Greece, that is in Phoenician language. So Greece was divided into many city-states because of the mountainous region, and because the existence of crisscross mountains, the country was divided into a number of valleys, and in each valley there developed a city-states. City-states means a city with its adjoining areas and that functioned like a state. That is called city states. And here in this, uh, there were landed aristocracy and peasants. Police means territorial political entity, and conflict with the, we have in Greece we have uh, a very dangerous war, that is conflict between the Persian and the Delian Confederacy. So there were certain reformers like the Solon, Cleisthenes, Pisistratus, etc. And when the war took place with Persia, which is called the which took place in 490 BC, and Greek city-states, though the war was won by the uh, Greek city-states, yet they remained under constant fear. They anticipated that sometimes in one day or the other there would be danger from the from the Persian side. So a, a confederacy was formed with the Athens at its head, and this confederacy was known as the Delian Confederacy. Since the treasury of this confederacy was kept at Delos Island, the name of confederacy is known as Delian Confederacy, and its head was under the presidency of Athens. And each member of Delian Confederacy were required to pay in cash for maintenance of war weapons. But one thing was not, which was not expected from Athens was that the collecting money, which was subscribed by various members of Delian Confederacy, Athens used it otherwise not for collective purpose, but to further her own military capacity. So with that money, she built big ships, big capital ships, and thus Athens became or Athens increased her military power. And whenever a member of a Delian Confederacy objected or raised question, she was threatened with dire consequences. In this way, Athens became powerful with the help of the money subscribed by the members of Delian Confederacy. And then we will go to the slave labor, use of slave labor. Slaves are generally used to do uh, the household drudgery and sometimes the difficult tasks outside the home. And slave system was there almost in all parts of the world. However, Indian case was different, but fate of slaves were almost more or less the same. And the heads in this also saw great personalities like the Pythagoras, the mathematician, the great philosophers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, who enriched the literature or who enriched the philosophy of this immensely. Then we have a Roman civilization. Roman civilization, Roman expansion. The Roman Republic lasted for 500 years. The city-state grew to an empire through a series of wars. Initially, the kingdom started with the city-states, then gradually it assumed the proportion of an empire, and that it was achieved through a series of wars. And it had two phases, first phase and second phase. During first phase or during this period, the entire Italian peninsula was brought under rule. During the first phase, the whole of Italy was brought under rule. It was the first stage, and it lasted for more than 2 centuries. During the second phase, the aim was to expand Roman influence to the Mediterranean. influence was to be extended to Mediterranean, and they they brought them into conflict, and this brought them into conflict with the Carthaginians. Carthage was a town on the opposite side, on the north of Africa. So when conflict started a over a colony, three wars were fought between Rome and Carthage, and these three wars are called Punic Wars. So first Punic War was fought or lasted from 264 BC to 241 BC, almost more than 20 years. And second Punic War 218 BC to 201 BC, almost 17 years. And third Punic War 149 BC to 146 BC, 3 to 4 years. And this territory is called Tunisia. Tunisia means where Carthage was located. So these during these Punic wars, finally Carthage was defeated. Not only defeated, Carthage was destroyed, and so much destroyed that nothing was spared. And one English term has been created. That is when we say that it's a Carthaginian peace or Carthaginian peace. What is it? Now peace concluded with the vanquished party when every when every or on the destruction of the whole of the vanquished party. Then we say that a Carthaginian peace was established. Understand? So Carthaginian peace and totally Carthage was completely destroyed. Then only it was called a Carthaginian peace. And Macedonia and Greek states, Mediterranean Sea remained the nucleus of the empire. Roman Empire, its nucleus was the Mediterranean Sea. Political structure and society. The early Romans had a kingship along with the Senate. It had a king and a Senate. The Senate exercised much power, and there were regular conflict with the king. So there was some sort of tussle between the Senate and the king with regard to the distribution of power. In 510 BC, monarchy came to an end in Italy, in Rome, and a republican state was established which lasted till 27 BC. Now also, Senate had much power and its membership was open only to the aristocracy. To be a member of Senate, no ordinary person was eligible to be a member of this Senate. And there were unequal social order, that is, the society was divided into two orders. One was patricians, the hereditary elite group, hereditary aristocratic group, and plebeians means the common. ordinary man, the common. And there was an assembly which is called a tribal. There was assemblies which was called tribal assemblies. One assembly was called Comitia Curiata, that is assembly of all citizens. Then king, kinship based Pura community vote one, only one. So though it was the assembly of the people, it still was allowed to cast only one vote. Then another assembly was Comitia Curiata. It was also assembly of all citizens, and it was divided into centuries. Each century had one. Unlike the Comitia Curiata, which had only one vote, taking all the members together, in Comitia Curiata, each 100 people had a one vote. That is, the members were divided into centuries, and each century had one vote. Consuls and censors were elected by the Comitia Curiata. Consuls and censors were high-class officers. They were elected by Centuriata, Comitia Centuriata, and all legislations had to be approved by it. All legislations had to be approved by Comitia Centuriata. War and it had also power. War and peace were the prerogative of that means no war could be declared, no peace could be signed with any foreign country unless approved by Comitia Centuriata, and the Comitia Curiata only looked after a few social and religious matters. That means all important decisions were taken by the assembly of Comitia Centuriata, while only trivial matters, that is, few social and religious matters, were decided by the Comitia Curiata. For a long time, the difference between the two social order, the patricians and the plebeians, was so great that for a long time intermarriage was prohibited by law. That means there could be no intermarriage between patricians, the aristocratic group, and plebeians, the common man. The Senate was a monopoly of patricians. No plebeians could be a member of the Senate. Then officials of the republic. There were two consuls, highest authority annually elected. These two consuls were the highest authority who were elected annually, and till 367 BC, only patricians could become consuls. That means plebeians were not allowed to become consuls till 367 BC. After a prolonged struggle, one post was thrown open to the plebeians. The plebeians struggled hard. They remained engaged in a protracted struggle against the patricians, the sequel of which was that one post of consuls, that means out of two, one was thrown open to the plebeians. And there were other officers, there were two censors to carry out the Roman census, Janaganana census, and junior magistrates were also there, known as aediles and quaestors. All magistrates held honorary posts. All magistrates held honorary posts. That means for the discharge of their function, they didn't receive any salary, which is called honorary. So all magistrates held honorary posts and struggled between patricians and plebeians. Though there was a huge gap, intermarriage was not allowed, and the plebeians had to work for the patricians. They were the common people, yet gradually they were given concessions till they could achieve the status of the patricians, till they were treated at par with the patricians. And they and the aristocratic people had no other option but to eat, because it were the plebeians who worked in their field, it were the plebeians who fought for them. So the plebeians had a very effective weapon with them whenever they felt that something wrong has been done to them. They resorted to, or they employed their weapon. That is what sort of weapon? They resorted to strike. That means they want to work for the patricians. So gradually, one concession after another were accorded to the plebeians till they were regarded at par with the patricians so far as social stature, social status is concerned. So they had certain demands. So one demand was that uh, they wanted to have consuls from their group. The second demand was uh, consulships was opened to the plebeians in 367 BC. This was first one. And then abolition of nexum. Nexum is a word that is harsh laws of formal contract. Nexum. That is, if a contract was made with the patricians and the plebeians could not keep his promise, then it it came under nexum. That is that a, fel- a plebeians who failed to pay debt or unable or they failed to fulfill their promise, then they were enslaved. That is called nexum. So the plebeians demanded that Nexum should be abolished. Third place in 287 BC, tribunes plebeians were invested with the full-fledged magisterial power. That the tribunes should be invested with magisterial power. Tribunes means one officer who was appointed on behalf of the plebeians or to look into the matters of plebeians. The name of that officer was called tribune, and the plebeians demanded that a tribune should be invested with magisterial power. And in same year, the decision of Concilium plebis was made binding on Roman state. Whatever decision was to be taken by the Concilium plebis, that decision should be binding on the Roman state. So that is the social differences was there. Still, social differences continued. And what is concilium plebis? There was an assembly consisting only of plebeians. Concilium plebis is an assembly consisting of only of plebeians. They discussed issues which concerned the plebeians. Its business was to discuss the issues concerning the plebeians. In 494 BC, the plebeians forced the Roman state to formally accept two officers elected by the Concilium plebis known as tribunes. Just I was discussing the tribunes, the officers which were appointed and were invested as per the demand of the plebeians with the powers to look after the well-being of the plebeians, and they were regarded as the spokesmen of plebeians. By 448 BC, there were 10 tribunes who were for the betterment of the plebeians. Uh, Being elected tribune gave to a plebeian some access to political power, something that was otherwise not possible at the beginning of the republic. So gradually and very slowly, the plebeians got concessions from the patrician class, the aristocratic class, and thereby most of the disabilities from which the plebeians suffered at the hands of the patricians were removed, and gradually they were treated at par with the patricians. They could become consuls, they could become tribunes, they could become other high officers of the state. And demands of the plebeians, as we have discussed, that there should be a written code of law to prevent abuse of judicial power. The plebeians demanded that there should be a written code of law. If law is not written, then the law could be interpreted to the advantage of the patricians, and there is every possibility of abuse of the law. So they demanded a codification or a written code of law. Then a set of law was prepared by a committee presided over by Appius Claudius. So, as per the demand of the plebeians, a committee was set up under the chairmanship of Appius Claudius to prepare a set of laws, and this set of laws was known as Code of the 12 Tablets. This was the set of law which was prepared and also written. This was known as Code of the 12 Tablets. So, this is the time I could not go further because of the fact that this is a working day and I have to visit my college once again to give a final attendance there. So only a small portion is left, a very negligible part is left of this book, and I hope the students will read it on their own. If you have any doubts, then you ask me in future. That is, if I am assigned a class further in the next class, if you have some doubts, then we will clarify those doubts. So today, because of some unavoidable circumstances, I am constrained to stop here my deliberations. Thank you all. If you are there, thank you all for giving me a presentation. Once again, hello, madam. Yes, yes,
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable information. And I believe learners must have studied this block before your class, because if they study before taking this block, it will be more easier for them to understand each and every concept of the course. And I am request all the learners, if you have any doubts, please go to our OSU website and contact me, your program coordinator. So in the next class, we will move with another block, that is block 4 of MHI-01. So now it's time to close this class. Let's wind up the session. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, learners. Thank you so much, our resource person. Thank you so much.
thank you.